Fast food workers of Reddit. What's the most NSFW thing your colleague did during work? McDonald's. My manager was covering at another restaurant. She's in the office with a drive-through headset on. A car comes in, but no one is taking the order. She gets out of the office to see what's going on, and the entire crew, probably 8 people, are gathered around a flaming deep fryer. She then spots a guy coming with a bucket of water. She stopped him in time with a lot of NSFW language. Story 2. He was selling pain pills out of the bathroom and at the register. We caught on pretty quick when a bunch of sketchy people kept coming in to say hi to this guy and not get any food. Story 3. It was me. I was 16 years old and not thinking at all. I deep-fried a couple Furby toys because they looked hilarious when melting. I didn't consider that they'd be leaving melted plastic, and who knows what else in the oil to be soaked up by the next batch of fries. I was fired for it, and deservedly so. Story 4. Not technically during work, but hours after we closed. An assistant manager and an employee had been drinking and had sex on the general manager's desk. The bread delivery man walked in and told them, I didn't see anything. However, he felt he needed to at least report the drinking to the general manager as to not risk losing his job. There were beer cans everywhere. The following morning, GM reviewed the surveillance footage. There was a camera pointing directly at them, and was in for a massive surprise. The assistant manager and employee were fired immediately. Story 5. Burger King in my hometown. Girl knew she was about to be fired. Pulled out her tampon and threw it in the fryer. They served a lot of fries before someone noticed. Story 6. In high school, I worked at Domino's. My manager was really badass. ID work late as hell on weekends, and it would be the 2 of us in the store. Sometimes he'd hand me the keys and the cash for the drivers and say, watch the store. And then him and this girl would go into the walk-in and duck. This usually happened 2 times a week. Me and him are still really good friends. I was even his best man at his wedding years later. Story 7. It was me. I dropped the salt shaker for the fries in the deep fryer and immediately dunked my hand in to fish it out. I only got about 2 knuckles deep before the pain brought me to my senses. No major damage. My manager told me to rub mustard on it and get back to work. Story 8. When I worked at a mall food court pizza place, there was a coworker that would trade the sloppiest BJ for covering her shifts so she could go to concerts. Literally the only thing I miss about that job. Story 9. When I worked at a Dairy Queen, we used to keep extra cups, containers, plastic utensils, and stuff like that out there. One night, one of the cashiers went out to the shed to get something and walked in on the manager do BJ her BF. Story 10. Wasn't fast food, but a regular restaurant. Another server was dating the head chef, and allegedly she do BA him off in the walk. And once dinner service was over for them. While I cannot confirm nor deny the rumors, the head chef was in an incredibly good mood when we closed that night and were having shift drinks. Story 11. I worked in a few pizza joints when I was young and some unethical stuff happened, but I never saw anyone mess with someone's food. My place was connected to a popular nightclub for metal bands, and I knew some of the people who ran it. Sometimes on a Saturday night, I'd get an order from there, and when I walked it over, they would take the hot bag and bring it back to me with 6 cold bottles of beer. I was under 21. And when we closed that night, we'd drink them in the back. Story 12. Not really NSFW, but a few guys wanted to see who could shout, scream the loudest, so we took turns going into the walk-in and just scream. Then the people outside would rate how loud it was. Story 13. I did the NSFW thing back when I worked at DQA. I was closing by myself, and my then-boyfriend was picking me up afterwards, so I invited him in, and we ducked on the cake decorating table. Story 14. KFC in the 90 AS. Microwaves were all mounted above the workspace like 6 up, so you had to either be tall or use a step stool to reach them. Employees regularly got burned trying to get large containers of beans, gravy, etc. out of them above their heads. Like literally 1 or 2 a week would get burned from them. Super NSFW, also the cooks, who were all in their mid-30s and on prison work release programs, were dealing all the time and would regularly get it on with their customers in the bathrooms during shifts. Story 15. Worked at some burger joint with TVs on the ceiling for sports. One night after closing, forgot some and went back to see from behind my fat colleague watching adult film on one of the TV with his pants down and his right arm moving. Story 16. Kitchens are the duckin' worst. It's been a decade since I worked in one, and I still have nightmares about it. Had one like 3 days ago. Wrecked my mood the entire day. If you want to eat out again, stop reading now. There aren't enough state health inspectors. They only come once a year. Often the store knows they're coming days in advance, so they do extra cleaning just for them when they get there. They do a 20-minute walk through with the GM distracting them the whole time. Then they leave for a year. I've been jaw-dropped by some of the stores I worked at that got a passing score. Fried things sometimes get dropped on the floor. If it was meat, it was too expensive to throw away, so we'd fry it for another minute and still serve it. Other times they were too busy to get clean serving utensils that had been dropped on the floor. Nobody ever washes the lemons that are in your tea. They too have been dropped on the floor. You'd be amazed at how much mold is in a kitchen. Even a clean one has dark, forgotten corners. Ice machines are especially guilty of this. Dish pits often give rise to exotic varieties that are resistant to heat and tamer cleaning chemicals. It gets stuck in caulk, and you just cannot get it out. The grout between tiles can sometimes become impregnated with it. Rare is the manager who will close the store for 3 days and pay thousands to fix that. If the store smells like eggs, persistent sewer issue, smells like almonds, cockroach infestation, dust on the ceiling or top of light fixtures, they don't care about cleaning. Nobody pays attention to how much junk the HVAC system is accumulating, redistributing. Sometimes, the grill cook would be so hungover that he'd just pull up a trash bin, puke in it, and keep working. Sometimes, there were cooks that were still drunk from the night before handing breathtakingly sharp knives. The trick about smoking in the walk-in is to blow it directly at the condenser. Pulls the smoke right out. Vape pens have made it infinitely easier. There was a dish guy. We had one guy who'd do substances in the bathroom. It was obnoxious. I'd have to work prep shifts with him where we were already intentionally understaffed to save money on labor. I'd come around the corner to ask him where he was on his list, and he'd be nodding off and drooling while cooking soup. It was also really scary to see him attempt to chop things in that state. Story 17. Colleague went to do substances about once every hour. I suggested him to seek counseling or help with nay or something like that. He got angry, walked over to me, pointed in my face, and yelled things. One of the things that he yelled was closely translated to, "You do not want to fight me." Story 18. I'm a cook in a restaurant. I met my wife there. She was a server and would manage some. Nights we both closed together. We'd get it on in every corner of the store. Faux, beau, bathrooms, office, the dumpster. I don't think there's an area we missed. We would openly text our boss and tell him we were going to screw and wear, and he'd just say to have fun, but he was doing his own business there with some of the servers. I promise you that every restaurant has employees ducking in it. You might as well not eat out at all if that bothers you. Story 19. I worked for Chipotle for 7 years at multiple different locations. Some of this I have participated in, witnessed, or heard of. There's a back room at one location that doesn't have any cameras. So after close, that's where multiple people would duck, shotgunning beers in the walk-in during a shift, hitting the weed carts all through the entire shift. My BF and I worked at the same location, and we went in overnight to prepare for the next day. He kept teasing me while we were working, so we went in the bathroom and ducked. I know a GM in Pittsburgh that got fired. He closed the store early. He gave everyone alcohol. Story 20. Manager was hooking up with dishwasher, who also ended up being a substances dealer. Kind of funny story I still tell people to this day. I was a line cook. For cooks, it was just me and this other really old guy. We both kept to ourselves, and never really knew much of what went on in the restaurant, because we didn't really leave our kitchen, unlike the servers who walked around everywhere and gossip. One day we get the labor department come in. They lock up the store for an hour and interview us all privately. Everyone is saying how, oh boy, we saw this coming, and me and my cook buddy are just like, TF is going on. My turn for the interview comes up. They hand me a piece of lined paper and say, tell us everything you know about what's been going on between your boss and the insert new hired dishwasher. I tell them I can't write anything down because I had no idea something was going on between. Talked to a server later that day and found out the manager had been hooking up with the dishwasher in the restaurant, in the office, in the prep room, in the dining area, etc. after hours, and in exchange, girl was giving the manager substance. Manager ended up getting arrested with charges related to acts with the employer. I don't remember exact charges. I remember his dad coming into the restaurant about a week after the arrest asking us if any of us knew he was selling substance and how he was as straight a student on the varsity baseball team, and they never expected that from him. Story 21. I was 19 closing manager at Arby's. Was into Craigslist personal. Met a guy and talked while closing, and he came into restaurant. I do BJ at one of the booths in the dining room. He then bent me over the counter and pounded me. Then we went into the back and ducked more in my boss's office and in the break room. Story 22. Ended up not working there, but our local Little Caesars ran an entire substances operation out the back door. I was 16, and my parents stopped me from working there when they found out from one of our neighbors who was a regular there, from both the front and back door. Story 23. In high school, I worked in a pretty wild environment at a movie theater, if that is close enough to count. Here are a few of the things I witnessed. For context, everyone who's not a manager below was in high school. Copious amounts of substance. The manager sold substances to everyone. One girl thought she was being pulled into the popcorn in front of customers and wigged out. Some people would snort pain pills in the back on lunch, and others would steal the graffiti remover spray and huff it behind the dumpster. The ice chest in the back for customer drinks always had at least one bottle of liquor in it that served as the community bottle for the shift. Our shift leader supplied it, and even our manager was drinking with us. The shift leader got blackout drunk once and passed out on the lobby couch during operating hours. People would constantly duck with the popcorn, spit in it, rub their balls in it, serve multi-day-old leftover popcorn. Lots of gross stuff. Numerous love triangles during work with people making out, banging in empty theaters or closets. We had cops hang out on weekends as security, and they were pretty trashy. By pranks, I mean emptying a can of pepper spray underneath the office door and holding the door closed for the manager to be trapped, or driving around the teenage drinking circle after our shift and flashing lights to give us a scare, and then drive off while laughing over his intercom. One of the ticket takers was in a wheelchair and would leave his crafty diaper on top of the trash in the main bathroom frequently. You can imagine the smell. That's just what happened during work hours. The trashy trailer parks we partied in after got really nuts. Story 24. IDK if Walmart Deli counts. This is a slight lead up to the NSFW at work, but I hated this coworker within a few days of her being hired, and she hated me equally. This went on for maybe a month-ish or so. We gradually became cordial to hold small talk. One night, she needed a ride home. I said sure, since I lived around the block from her. I jokingly said, gas money? With an obvious playful look. I never asked for gas, Lamau. It was a pure joke, but she replied, not without knowing what it looked like. Totally caught me off guard, but I said, shit, don't challenge me, and she repeated herself. After work, I whipped my junk out and started driving home, and she do BJ off Lum Fao. Yada yada, one day at work, I asked her to come help grab some supplies from this old freezer that didn't work and turned into a storage room. We were in the same department and working the same shift. As soon as we entered, I shoved her over a rack and just get sexed out for about 10 minutes. This became a reg. Thing, text, we go, we come back. Even went on break and went to PetSmart bathroom one time. We dated for a few years and now I hate her again, took money, etc. from me. Now I'm happily married to my soulmate for 5 years so far. Life is strange. Story 25. My friend got like 50 BJ in the party room and walk-in cooler, and once behind a fridge door out in the open, and in the parking lot, as well as some sex in the walk-in, over a few years at the same place with a few different coworkers. My friend misses those days. Story 26. Used to work in KFC and hot the job through a friend. First day in, and he shows me a dirty old fleece and asks me, do I know what it is, and awkwardly say I tease mayonnaise. Turns out it was the manager's mayonnaise from a bit of fun with the supervisor and obviously had nowhere to wipe and clean himself up. After about 1 year, the rumors had been circulating the whole time that the married manager was shagging the supervisor, but never had any proof then. The suggestive evidence came out. I was left cleaning with another lad while the manager and supervisor had vanished. 30 minds later, and my blood's boiling after a long shift and no one to close the shop. Manager comes around the front of the shop front. No reason to be out the front. And 2 mins after him, the supervisor comes from the back store, both of them awkward and smiling. I called them out on it and told them straight if I catch them bucking while I'm waiting to get home, I'll lose my crap. They both laughed it off, and 9 months later, there was a half-Filipino, half-Irish baby born and a marriage broken up, if I remember right. Story 27. Back in the 90s, a guy I know got caught mixing crap in with the refried beans at Taco Bell. Allegedly, it wasn't the first time he'd done either. It was a big deal and even made the news. I know he was fired and the police got involved. Don't know what happened from there. Story 28. 2 managers at the McDonald's I worked at were ducking on top of the boxes of lettuce or in the freezer on the nuggets. We all heard it, and some of us had the misfortune to see it. Story 29. The worst I have seen in a coworker holding one nostril and blowing the contents of his other nostril into a rude customer's burger. I've always treated all food workers kindly, but since that day, I got super nice. It still sometimes pops to mind when I go to McDonald's, etc. Let's just say it ruins my meal, the memory of it. Story 30. I've worked for a few railroads, and we lay over in hotels that are a bit sketchy. Last year, one of the front desk clerks passed out in the bathroom on substance. His colleagues covered for him for a few hours, but at 8 a.m. they decided to break the door in. He was stone cold dead. At another hotel, one of my co-workers, there were about 1,000 of them, married one of the front desk clerks. She was absolutely gorgeous. Sadly, my coworker was a douche. Lots of notes about the women he banked in the different rooms over the years. He got fired for showing up to work drunk too many times. She was pregnant with twins, and they eventually got divorced. That is the SFW story from there. Also at that hotel, the GM got fired for ducking several railroaders at different times, sometimes multiple guys a day. So did a few other employees. This is over several years. And there are more than a few guys who pass in their rooms of heart attacks over the years. Story 31. First job ever at Subway with my best friend. We'd always have our friends in to hang out when it was just us. Needless to say, we had some good time. It's a toss-up, though. Either doing blow in the back only to come back out absolutely geetered to a line out the door and severely ducking up a cop's sandwich, or waited until people came in. Just so happened, it was 2 moms and 5 kids between them. And we had planned a robbery of our napkins and straws via friend running and screaming and grabbing a bunch of crap and running back out. It did not go so well. That was 2008 middle of Iowa small town for you. Story 32. I've been in food service for 17 years at a deli and never had anything dirty happen at the store. But if you count projectile vomiting, we had that happen when, as a thanks for winning a best store contest 2 years in a row. Our manager ordered food from a Mexican place down the street. I was the only person on shift that didn't get sick because I don't eat much on shift due to my gut issues. Story 33. So not in the restaurant, but we were both waitstaff. Really cute girl and I started to BJ face one day after work. She wanted to go to a movie. Went and saw the Wolverine movie, and she proceeded to do BJ and transition to reverse cowgirl in the theater. She also had me come over to her house multiple times in the middle of the night, while her parents slept on the other side of the house. She's the reason my children will not have a first-floor bedroom, or I'll put bars on the windows. Story 34. Worked at Domino's for 4 years. Here we go. For starters, everybody is ducking everybody. A coworker of mine was screwing 3 girls that worked in the store. Back in Snapchat days, my coworkers would put their nudes or videos of them ducking on their story, which was absolutely wild. None of us ever ducked the customer, but a lot of them saw titties and were offered sex, but declined. It was usually the hotels, motels where that happened. This girl had worked there for years, and this dude gets hired. Big tall dude with an accent. She falls in love with the guy, and they start hanging out for a few months. Eventually, she gets pregnant and tells him. He got scared, so he quit. And last I heard had moved to San Fran and cut contact with him. She was a git, but I still don't feel like she deserved that. Story 35. Worked at a popular chain steakhouse for 7 years. I had my fair share of rude customers, getting stiffed, etc. But this one customer went beyond rude to downright disrespectful. The last straw for me was when I was carrying a tray of food past him. Without looking up or saying anything, he pushed his empty glass of Diet Coke into my chest as a way of telling me he needed a refill. That was the day I found out dunking your sweaty nuts in an ice-cold glass of Diet Coke can really cool you to the core. Story 36. Not me, but my brother. He was working at Chili's for quite some time, and there was a lot of drama with his coworkers. This girl and her boyfriend worked together, and so did one of her friends. When the girl who was dating the guy wasn't on shift, her friend would flirt with her boyfriend, and he'd flirt back. They ended up ducking in the walk-in freezer. They didn't get caught when it happened, but the Git girl made a TikTok about being railed in the walk-in freezer. And of course it went viral. I don't even know if she mentioned Chili's or not, but they found it and fired her and the guy. She insisted on it being a joke. Story 37. I'm not proud of this, but it's a thing that happened when I was much younger. I gave a coworker head in the back of house during business hours while we were supposed to be counting sightline. We're safe enough that if someone else had come back, we would have had plenty of time for him to quickly button his pants back up. Story 38. It's not a fast food restaurant, but a BBQ joint. The breakfast. Lunch head chef was a lesbian, and her partner came in from time to time and sat at the bar. We were all friendly with her. Both the chef and her partner were super nice. One of the servers, who was kind of an unhinged alcoholic, kept hitting on the chef's partner when she would come in, and even after getting told off multiple times, kept doing it. Eventually, he, the alcoholic server, ordered some food on his lunch break, and the chef, who happened to be making it, pissed in his food. Like, literally just squatted down behind the line and pissed in it. It was a shrimp scampi mac and cheese. He ate the whole thing and never found out. Story 39. An old manager of mine used to have sex with an employee in the cooler after the deli closed. Another used to have sex with random men right on the pizza cutting table before the owner put cameras in. Neither manager would disinfect anything afterward. Story 40. Not fast food, but Applebee's. Close enough? This was 15 years ago. We had a guy bartending that had a history with a lot of ex-girlfriends. One night, we were grabbing servers behind the bar for a birthday song. He walked into the middle of us with a daiquiri. He pulled out his junk and stuck it in the drink. Then he walked back around, put whipped cream on it, and served it to a girl at the bar. It was his ex who was semi-stalking him and kept coming to the bar to sit all night and make sure he wouldn't flirt with anyone else. No one said anything. Some laughed. Most of us were just in shock that someone would do that. Story 41. Years ago, I used to work at a place that sells smoothies. Rhymes with Mamba Moose. A few coworkers used toke up in the freezer. I was a regular weed smoker at the time, yet never joined in. I kept my weed smoking for after work and weekends. Never felt right about going into work stoned. Anyway, the smell somehow lingered, and one day one of my other coworkers said how it smelled like a skunk in the freezer and was so confused and concerned as to why. At a pizza place I used to work at, there was substances use in the bathroom. Those pizzas were getting slung out real quick. However, the quality of the pies was still on point. Story 42. I used to work at Steak Escape, and at the time we only had enough people to have one person close the front and one for the dish area in the back. It was a really crafty couple of months until one night the girl closing the back kissed me out of nowhere. We fooled around a little bit and finished closing up. Every time we closed together after that, we fooled around. Did sex until one night we finally ducked on the prep table. It was hot, but a little unsanitary in retrospect. We continued hooking up at work until staffing levels went back to normal and worked together normally until I got another job some months later. Story 43. Lots of sexual activities. I'm from a college town with a big downtown scene. Sex in the walk-in, sex in the office, sex in the bathroom, sex in the pantry, sex in the booths, flashing in the drive-thru, hand job in the smoker's shack, BJ behind the dumpster. Story 44. Not fast food. But I worked for a company that got workers for a large food packaging firm in the UK. The sinks are outside of the toilets in view of management. If you don't wash your hands properly after using the toilet, you're sacked on the spot. I was there for an hour and saw a few people get sacked. Management were hot on it, but I don't know if they catch everyone. Something like a dozen people touch your food before you get it. Story 45. My BF and I both worked at a Burger King, and we're both supervisors. We were flirting with each other all night and ended up being the two to close. Once we got everything done, we clocked out and went to leave. And the second the door to the back closed, we were still inside, just near the bathrooms where the dining room and kitchen area meet and were out of sight of the cameras. I pushed him against the wall, pulled down his pants, and do BJ. Story 46. Burger King. I worked the night shift, 24 hours drive-through, which happened to be across a rather popular bar in town. One night, at the tail end of bar closing rush, some dudes came through and harassed the girl working cash at the window. Just belligerent drunk crap. They complained they didn't get their burgers. They did. And demanded free burgers from the night manager, all while continuing their drunk crap talk. The night manager took 2 Whopper patties to the washroom and pissed on both of them. He then made the sandwiches and said, "On the house." They left. I learned that day never be crafty to people that serve your food. Story 47. I got hired at Papa John's and found out my ex-girlfriend not only worked there, but was also banging the manager on heat bags after hours in the shop. His was 34. We were 16. I'm still cool with Sarah. But man, I kind of felt bad for her. I guess I should have told someone, but in my head I thought that was being vindictive since we used to date, and I still liked her. Story 48. One time at Mackey's, a coworker dipped his junk in someone's Coke before serving it to them. He was fired because someone else told on him, hours after the fact. Yes, the customer was given the drink. Story 49. Tim Hortons, the night manager, used to do BJ every Friday, Saturday night, once it was just us, and it was closing shift. We were a mall Timmy's. The mall closed an hour before our shift was up so she could clean and I could stage. It started off as us toking in her car after work. We'd make out, I'd awkwardly finger her, she'd do BJ. Then it eventually moved to her jumping me as soon as she was done cleaning. I got fired after about 1 year, though, for coming in on a day off and stealing a bagel. Story 50. When I was a young teenager, I worked at Papa Gino's, a Boston-area Italian-ish pizza chain. I worked the grill, flat top, not a BBQ-type grill, making steak and cheese, pasta dishes, burgers, and grilled hot dogs. What we'd do is microwave the hot dogs, and then put them on the grill to make it look they were grilled. Once grilled, we'd take whatever soapy rag we had lying around, wipe off the crap from the grill and plate it, put it in the bun. Story 51. It was 5 minutes before close, probably 11:55 p.m. A guy pulls up and orders a Whopper. The kitchen worker has already thrown all the lettuce, tomatoes, and burger patties in the trash. Premature cleanup, but we all want to get home. The guy then adds, "It's for a cop." The shift lead shouts back asking if we have it. Yep, that cop got his 10% discount on a Trashburger. Story 52. So, receiving end, I guess? I lived in a house that was about 5 feet away from a cottage and pizza place from my window. I could basically touch their side wall. They were always open till 2 a.m., but managers left at midnight and we would usually party on our porch late into the evening. They would bring over pizzas and trade us for rips on the bong and beers. They usually closed that store hardcore cross faded every night. Story 53. Not me, but a person came through the drive-thru with a swastika tattoo on their forehead. This is small-town southern Ontario, which is conservative, but not that conservative. It was an interesting moment for sure. Nobody acknowledged it, and we acted normal with him. I wanted to flip out, though. One of my coworkers also wore an ego sweater to work for Halloween, and of course no one acknowledged it except for me. I was the only one dead as who said he shouldn't be wearing it. Story 54. Worked at Little Caesars for a summer. Was folding pizza boxes asking with this very pregnant lady when the manager came by and started telling her about how he used to care a pregnant woman and she would lactate when he licked hay nipples. As soon as he left, she turned to me and said, "You heard that right?" To which I said yes. And then she said, "Okay, I'm calling HR and you're going to be my witness." It was my first day. Story 55. Dipped his nuts in the fruit and yogurt parfait or hocked a loogie in the local high school, a Hole's double quarter pounder with cheese. You tell me which was worse. Story 56. Definitely not as bad as some of the stuff here, but 2 of my coworkers, F for female, M for male dollar, actively talk about what they got each other for Christmas. Gave F a vibrator and F gave M a fleshlight. They would, in their loudest voices, talk about how much they enjoyed using them and all the different types of lube they used while slicing deli meat for customers. Crap is disgusting, and I've already told a manager about it. Story 57. 20M at the time, was a pizza delivery driver, and she was the counter girl sub-maker. We were both in relationships, but we duck or whatever every chance we got. Back room, pantry, bathroom, behind the counter, when closed. Went on for a whole summer. We would close up and be the last two there, and I'd drive her home every night. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. 20 years ago, and I'll never forget her. Story 58. I worked the service bar in the kitchen. Many staff would go in the walk-in and snort all the propellant, amyl nitrate, out of the whipped cream cans. Dessert chef would be pissed that there were 15 full containers of whip with no way to extract it. Story 59. My closer, who had also been my close friend and roommate for years, and also one of the most intellectually brilliant people I know, was mopping the store before closing. In an effort to clean the floor quickly, he mixed degreaser and bleach in with the hot water. Had to close the store early and leave all the doors open and hang out outside until it aired out so we could close. We ended up leaving an hour later than normal. Story 60. I had a female coworker reach down in my pants in front of 5 other female coworkers and grab my junk. She was dared to do it to see if I was real. The responses of damn by them were a boost to my ego. My dumma didn't put it together until much later that I was abused. The phrase "so smart that I'm stupid" pops up when I remember this. Story 61. Not fast food, but I was bartending one Saturday night, and this woman I had been hooking up with comes to the bar to surprise me. An hour later, I'm in the dry storage, and she's due BJ and just throws up all the drinks she had all over my junk and the floor. I just kicked it under a shelf, took her back to the bar, and went back to work like nothing happened. Story 62. A friend told me that, at this McDonald's, the manager was using a bucket of water during the day to clean the ice cream machine when one day he stayed late into the night for a reason. The manager saw the cleaning staff using the same bucket to mop the floors. This happened for months before anyone noticed. Story 63. Not a fast food place, but I worked in the restaurant of a country club, and we sold fancier food along with hot dogs for the golfers. Walked into my shift one morning, and my coworker was using steam from the full hot dog machine to polish glasses. He told me at least half the glasses in the restaurant had been polished with the hot dog steam. Glasses smelled like straight meat. Story 64. DM of a Papa John's district visited the store where her husband was GM, different district, and there appeared to be no one there. There had been some high-profile restaurant robbery, so she called the police, worried that her husband was dead in the walk-in. Right when an officer showed up, her husband and the phone girl walked out, so he got a charge for statutory abuse and a divorce. Woohoo! Also fired. Story 65. I worked in nightclubs, so there was always something. One of our bartenders got drunk during work. After bar closed, she used the emerge exit, which was common for hooking up. Get sex the security. Got cream-pied and came back to finish her shift. They both told me afterwards and didn't know I knew, but it was hilarious. Made sure to invite her to all my house parties. Story 66. The managers would regularly talk about doing substances the cold table. People did substances there all the time. Smoking in the coolers was a regular thing. There was always booze mixed into drinks. It was a part-time job in college, so I didn't really care as long as cops never became a problem. Nobody was ever sober at that Jimmy John. Story 67. Was the manager at a pizza joint with almost my whole friend group. Nothing too crazy happened, but we were either drunk or stoned while making all those orders. Craziest thing to have happened was me being questioned by the cops. Because a customer thought I put my hair on her pizza, I had a huge afro after talking to the cops. I wish I would have done it. Story 68. Sprayed cleaning solution into the ice tray, which was mounted under the counter. Dropped burger patties on the muddy ground, picked them up, and cooked them. Neither of these were done maliciously. Just a bunch of dumb, lazy fast food workers getting paid $5 per hour and didn't care. I don't know, it was over 20 years ago, but I haven't eaten at McDonald's ever since. I choose to remain blissfully ignorant about Chick-fil-A. Story 69. Not a fast food, but a regular restaurant. Employees worked while on substances, drunk, and continued drinking on the job. We had a chef who did CK on busy nights. Fun stuff. I worked at several different restaurants, and this had always had the cleanest kitchen. Story 70. One of the managers left us substances in the walk-in fridge for the closers to use at McDonald's. I'm convinced that they fire you if you pass the substances test there. Story 71. Worked at Panera Bread. My coworker, good buddy, and I occasionally went into the walk-in to inhale nitrous from the whipped cream when it was slow. He once did so much he fell over and spilled a huge container of broccoli cheddar soup all over the floor, then slipped in it trying to get up. Story 72. Invited me to a group sex. I declined, but I was not offended or anything. He was a really cool guy, and I thought he was hitting on me for a while, then, out of nowhere, Mentions he's glad that he had his Wednesdays off again because he could resume his weekly men-only orgies and asked if I wanted to join. Story 73. Allegedly, young woman getting overly friendly and thus overly hands-on with me, a coworker, and vice versa. Allegedly, she'd also pull me into the freezer to show me what the lingerie she bought for her boyfriend looked like. Pretty much as soon as we were out of sight of customers, cameras, or other coworkers, we were allegedly feeling each other. Story 74. We all stored our personal drinks, soda, soft drinks, bottles in a corner of the walk-in chiller. One guy we suspected was going in there and just helping himself to everyone else's. Half filling up one bottle with very, very hot chili juice, soon found the culprit out. Not sure it fits NSFW exactly, but yeah, there we go. Story 75. Not someone I worked with, but someone I went to school with. He ended up putting a chemical in a coworker's drink, knowing that it would actually cause burns internally. And of course, the person drank it, and it did exactly what the person thought it would do. Anyways, he is now in prison for 6 years for attempted murder. Story 76. He went outside and curb stomped on a bird. He took pictures and showed it to everybody, and he was soon fired after that. His defense before getting fired was, "It was a crow anyways, they are bad luck." Story 77. I worked at Papa John's. After I quit, I met up with a coworker for some drinks. He told me that one of the older ladies who's a delivery driver paid him money to have sex with her, so he got paid like $100 and ducked her in the office. Story 78. One of my old colleagues while I was a delivery driver harassed a girl. He was 35, she was 20. He kept bugging her to come home with him and kept making inappropriate comments or sat just a little too close. Nothing happened, but it made her really uncomfy, and the team leaders brushed it off completely. Story 79. Surprised this hasn't been mentioned, but an ex-GF of mine said sex was very common in the McDonald's ball pits in the 90 AS, especially at night when had left and they thought no one could see them. They also almost never cleaned the balls. The plastic balls, I mean. What were some of the worst experiences you have had while working in the fast food industry? I was 16, working front line, cashier. A man walked up, and instead of ordering, he started talking about how his daughter was in vet school. I smile, nod, say something like, "That sounds nice." He then responds with, "Yes, she did something with her life, unlike you." Story 2. Not fast food, but while I was working at a chain grocery store, a middle-aged woman was pushing her cart through the parking lot when she lost control of it going downhill, and it slammed into someone's car whilst they were in it. She attempted to blame me, who had been a few feet away from her, for pushing her cart full of groceries into the car when the person went to confront her. Luckily, the person saw through her blaming it on me and proceeded to ask her again if the cart full of groceries were hers. When she repeated it wasn't, he shrugged and said, "Guess it's no one's," then proceeding to load all of the groceries from her cart and putting it in his car before leaving, all while she had to stand there and say nothing. If that car owner was an idiot, it could have turned real different for me. Story 3. I don't know if any of you remember the grilled onion cheddar burger that McDonald's used to serve, but we used to keep the grilled onions in a heated tray in the grill area. One of the guys I used to work with at McDonald's came in one day, all pissy. He used to chew tobacco while working, which was gross enough as it is. Well, he got caught on camera spitting his chew into the grilled onion tray. I think he got away with doing that almost his whole shift until someone saw the tape in the manager's office. He was fired on the spot. I'm not sure what they did about the burgers that went out served like that. Story 4. I went to hand a drink out the drive-through window, and the asshats in the car threw a large blue Powerade all over me. My manager said if I went home early due to being soaked, I was fired. Story 5. I had a very short stint working at the Golden Arches. The soda machine was literally never cleaned. On my first closing shift, I went to take the nozzles off the soda machine, and there was mold literally caked around the inside of each nozzle. The manager told me that the constant stream of soda kept the machine clean, so it wasn't necessary to remove the nozzles. Bullcrap. I can't drink soda from McDonald's or any other fast food place anymore. Story 6. I saw a dude clean a bathroom floor covered in logs of crap on his first day, first job, for 2 months worth of free Taco Bell anytime he wanted. Still unsure if he won this deal. Story 7. A coworker dumped mop water through the ice cream machine in an attempt to clean it, like the part where the soft serve goes to freeze. Edit. Guys, please stop making jokes about the McDonald's ice cream machine always being down. There are plenty. Story 8. I had a guy overdose and pass in the bathroom while managing at Carl's Jr. I was told to close the lobby, but keep the drive-thru open. It was weird pooping where a dude died. Story 9. I managed a breakfast joint for a while, beginning a few months after it originally opened. We have a very large oven where we bake our bagels. And one day, after the bagels had been baked for the day, the baker left the door open to cool. While I was up front, the restaurant and I could hear a deafening "holy crap" from the back where the oven was. I walked back laughing, expecting to see a proofing rack knocked over or some other stupid mistake. Instead, I'm hit with a geyser of jet black water from the sprinkler system above the oven. Well, shouting resumed as we tried to cover what we could while waiting for the fire department to arrive. FD arrived and spent the next 2.5 hours looking for the shut-off switch for our sprinkler. Turns out the switch had been inadvertently covered, obstructed during the building's Our Store's construction. I got to stay late that day and help clean every ounce of black, smelly water from our appliances and slicers. 3 hours of pressurized water in the kitchen. Story 10. We had a notice board that customers could pin their adverts on. One week, we took everyone's stuff off so that we could use it as a memorial for our coworker who had just recently passed away. One customer came in and started going ballistic at us that we took her advert down. She didn't care that it was a memorial. My coworker ended up crying out the back for the rest of her shift. Story 11. Worked a Burger King a while back that stayed open till 2 a.m. One manager was actually a reasonable person and was an older lady that clearly paid her dues to the company. At my store, we only had 2 closers, so from about 10 o'clock to 3 a.m., it was just me and a manager. The night I put my 2 weeks in, she's just grumpy and teary-eyed, looking at her phone, and she's not usually the manager who does that. Her oldest was going into a complicated premature labor and nobody could help her. No area manager wanted to come out that late. Corporate didn't care because that was part of the job. She was crying all night until we closed. Busted out of there 10 minutes after closing time, we broke so many rules. Duck corporate people who think you have to take your time away from your children for crafty burgers. Story 12. Does Starbucks count? A woman demanded room, space for sugar cream in her latte, then burst back in line, demanding more room, then berated me for throwing out the ones she returned for damaging the environment, because I didn't resell them, apparently, then demanded less room. Our manager ended up telling her she just had to leave because the line became enormous. Story 13. I worked at McDonald's part-time while I was in college. One day, I was working the drive-thru and this guy ordered a lot of drinks. One of them was low on soda syrup, but instead of just telling me about it like a rational person, so I could give him a replacement drink, he threw the extra-large drink at me. Of course, the lid came off and I was soaking wet. The manager, who was actually pretty good as far as fast food managers go, saw this happen. He took off running into the parking lot, flagged down the driver before he could leave, and told him to never come back. Then he came back in, found me a dry uniform shirt, and let me have a few minutes on the clock to sit in the break room and calm down. Story 14. Money was going missing, and as the newest employee, I was suspect number 1. My boss was a great guy, and my coworkers were very loyal to him, so I started getting threats. Eventually, it was confirmed to be a different worker, and everyone apologized. Still sucked, though. Story 15. I was working the drive-thru and gave the lady her food. Not 15 feet down the road from the window is a trash can and a sign that says, "Please do not litter." You can probably guess what happened next. She throws her wrapper right in front of me, and as she drives off, I say, "Are you kidding me?" Next thing I know, I hear a screech of tires and hear a car door slam. She walks back to the window and starts to curse me out, saying, "What the duck did you say? You throw your crap on the ground too. Don't bullcrap me." I just point to the sign and say, "No, I throw my trash in the trash can like a normal human being, have a nice ducking day," and shut and lock the window. Luckily, my manager was pretty chill and didn't care, and I just went about the rest of my day. Story 16. I used to work in a bakery and a grocery store. I was the cake decorator, and the cakes were in containers and in a cooler that customers could just take and go to pay. While 2 kids, 6 and 8 years oldish, ran over and started throwing the cakes on the ground, like happy birthday to the ground style. They were on their 6th cake before I could reach them and took the cakes in their hands. Their mom came over, sight, and just turned the kids around and started to the produce section like nothing happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, no words to the kids about the $100 they just cost us and my time. Story 17. Was 15 and working for the Golden Arches in a big 2-story city location. An elderly lady came in to use the upstairs toilet, and when she came back down, she had poop caked all over her hands, which she dragged down the banister she used to steady herself on down the stairs. She then went and sat at a table for a moment before leaving. She clearly had dementia, although I didn't recognize that at the time. I was sent to the bathroom to investigate the damage, and it was a literal crap show. I reported back to my manager, who told me I had to clean it all up. No thanks. I quit on the spot. I was not cleaning up crap for $5 an hour. Story 18. Worked at McD's as my first job at 15. Worst thing I probably saw was one of the guys working the fryer tripped, and when he reached out to stop himself falling, he ended up with half of his hand in the fry oil. I think the entire store heard my, "Oh crap." Story 19. Not fast food, but at a restaurant. I was the waiter for a nice, older couple, and they ordered salads as an appetizer before their meal. After a couple minutes, the man calls me over and shows me the tip of a broken drill bit he bit into from his salad. Expecting a lawsuit, my heart skipped a beat and went into adrenaline mode as I quickly got the manager. Tom came over white-faced and apologized profusely while offering a few gift cards and comping, free, their meal. Shockingly, the couple didn't threaten or get irate. Found out later that Tom had been drilling near the prep line in the kitchen earlier in the day to fix something and saw the drill bit snap, but couldn't find the tip. The couple even tipped me well. "You dodged a bullet, Tom." Story 20. Someone said, "Give me some of those fresh-baked cookies, I can smell you baking them." When first of all, we just reheat frozen ones, and secondly, we just put one in the microwave for a guest who asked us to. When we told him this, he started to yell, then walked behind the counter to go check. I called my manager, and he started to push her around to go check, screaming, "I want my fresh cookies." He then tried to hit on one of our team members in the back, then took off his shirt and screamed when she asked him to go away. We had to escort him out after calling the police. Story 21. I worked night shift at a Krispy Kreme. It was always just me and the manager. She never helped. She'd just go in the office to do paperwork and leave me alone for 8 HRS to make everything. Because I knew she'd leave me alone, I'd take the trash out multiple times a night for a smoke sesh. Well, one night I come back in from my smoke sesh and notice the conveyor for the OG glazed is starting to rattle pretty badly. There's several things you needed to turn off prior to stopping the conveyor: glaze fountain, heating elements, dough ejector thingy. So I turn all of those off, but for some reason the conveyor is in a weird dieseling state where it continues to run but is disconnected from power. I start to panic. The conveyor keeps going and continues to get more and more loud. I start pounding on the manager's office door, but she won't answer. Crap's starting to fall apart, and my baked ass can't handle it. I finally shoulder charge her office door down, screaming, "TF, I need help!" But she isn't in there. Look on her security screens, her car isn't even in the parking lot. Once I realized that Git was gone, the conveyor finally went. The motor took out one end of the conveyor line, and gallons of 100% pork lard fryer oil covered the floor of the entire kitchen. I called the off-duty manager, told him what just happened, said, "Duck this, I'm done," and just left. And Story 22. I was a waitress at a pizza place, and an older man and woman flagged me over, and they just start yelling at me, going on and on, that they found metal in their food. And she's showing me and yelling, and I'm trying to apologize and saying, "We can make you a new pizza. I am sorry. I have no idea where it came from." After several minutes of yelling, the man gets quiet and he goes, "Oh, I lost a filling." Then they tried to be all nice and laugh it off. I just wanted to say screw you for treating me like crap. Story 23. I worked at a movie theater one semester in high school. I was scheduled as a porter, which basically means I was responsible for sweeping up the theaters between shows and throwing out trash. When I got to the back row, there was a cup in the cup holder without the top on. It turned out to be filled with piss. Story 24. I was a car hop at Sonic Drive-In through most of high school. I was the only guy that was able to use the roller skates. An extremely creepy old man in a vehicle that might as well have been in a scrapyard called me back to his car after I started to go back inside. Gave me a $15 tip because that ass needed a second look. Story 25. I worked at a Cane's Chicken around graduation season. He had massive catering orders, like 600 chicken fingers, 500 pieces of toast, 250 coleslaws, multiple orders like this on the same day while also being our busiest day of the week. We were going nuts. Even the owner was there to help. Of course, this is the day corporate decides to make a surprise visit. The owner got reamed, even though we were consistently scoring as one of the top locations on a regular day. So he reamed the manager, who then reamed us. So we're already stressed out and tired, and now we're being shouted at by irate customers, the owner, and our manager. I'm surprised we didn't all quit that day. Story 26. I had a rough-looking guy in a beat-up truck try to use one-year-old coupons. I refused to take them. That was a mistake. He held up the drive-thru and screamed at me, including "Smarten up, son, or you're going nowhere in life." Made me feel like crap until I realized that someone like that who was screaming those things at a 15-year running the drive-thru did not go anywhere in life. Story 27. At McDonald's, of course. I was a first assistant manager. We had a kid who was just promoted to shift manager. He was a very good employee and he knew his stuff. We had high hopes for him. His very first shift, 5 minutes into the shift, he does a walkthrough of the dining room. He asks a girl to change a trash bag and she tells him no, that she can't do it. He walks to the back of the store, gets the trash masher, basically a mop handle with steel plates on the end to compact the trash, walks to the garbage bag and mashes the trash. He then takes the trash masher and knocks the girl out with it, screaming, "I'm the ducking boss and everyone better do whatever I tell them," and continued to yell at everyone about how she needs to be fired for insubordination and no one else better ever test him. He was arrested in the store and was trying to argue with the police officers that he was in the right. The girl was okay. Story 28. Not fast food, but a gas station. My coworker decided to clean the coffee machines. Normally we have a special cleaner, but she used bleach. Just filled them with bleach, emptied them, and rinsed them out. If I hadn't have noticed the bleach smell from the morning coffee, we might have had somebody drink bleach, bean water, Story 29. When I worked at Subway, this guy asked for sriracha sauce on his sandwich. I put the regular amount on, then he asked for more. I put more on. He asks for more. Eventually, he's screaming at me to put more sriracha on the sandwich, to which I end up emptying out the entire bottle on it. He's still not satisfied, so I have to get more. 1/2 bottle of sriracha later, he says it's enough. Still remember him to this day. Story 30. I used to work at Sonic. On rainy days, especially when it was pouring, people would intentionally park across the lot, the spare spots that weren't covered by their famous awning, and make the car hops walk the food out there to them. We'd be standing there outside their car window with the food on a tray, waiting for them to roll down their window. They'd take their sweet time getting out their cards or cash while we were getting drenched. All the while, there were plenty of open spots under the awning, closer to the restaurant and out of the rain. By the time they took their food from us, they would demand the meal for free since it was wet. Mind you, not wet enough to give back the food, just wet enough to demand a full refund while they shoved the offending fries in their mouth. Those people also never tipped. Also, we had people who would make us go back inside and replace their 44 ounces drink 4 and 5 times, even when you insisted it was the right drink. This ain't diet. Sir, I poured this drink myself. I can assure you it's diet. I want you to go back in there and do it again, and I better not have to send this back a 3rd time. Story 31. Not me, but my mother worked at a restaurant with a chef that wouldn't remake an order after the customer found various fingernails in it. Edit. Well, this blew up. I'll use this opportunity to say, don't do fingernails, kids. Story 32. I had worked at McDonald's my entire high school and was in the summer before starting colleges. I was at a gas station filling gas while still wearing my uniform. A woman turned to her kids and said, "Look, there is a loser who has done nothing with their life. Joke's on her now. I got a full ride to college and am now working at my dream job as a software engineer." Story 33. I worked for McDonald's in a mall while I was in high school, and the worst was Black Friday 1987. The night before, I had slipped and fallen in my bathroom and hit my eyebrow. It needed an trip and 7 stitches and left me looking like Frankenstein's monster. I tried to call in and was informed that I hadn't called early enough. They didn't have time to call someone to fill in on my scheduled shift. And so, I showed up for work with an oozing eyebrow, a splitting headache, and on about 4 hours sleep. It was also insanely busy, so I barely got to grab lunch. 20 minutes in line to order my food, cut from a 30-minute lunch break. Basic training for the Navy was less stressful. Edit 1. I don't remember if it was called Black Friday back in the 80s. It was the day after Thanksgiving, however, and that has always been a very busy shopping day. 2. I didn't get a note, mainly because I was still a bit dazed. My mother had to drive me to the air, as I still didn't have my license, and drive me to work later on. And she didn't think that I needed a note because of the giant gash, her words, over my eyebrow. My oversight. 3. No medics were prescribed. After a couple of days, the headache went away. I have a pretty damned high pain threshold, so I would not have thought to take them anyway. Therefore, announcing how high I was never would have crossed my mind. Maybe I'm too honest. Story 34. Worked at Wendy's for 2 weeks. Wasn't bad until someone spread crap all over the men's restroom and they wanted me to clean it up. It was on the ceiling, toilet, all the walls. Like someone had a poop confetti bomb. Just rubber gloves, no mask. I said, duck it and quit. Story 35. I worked in a small Macca's during the Sydney Olympics. I was about 15 at the time. There was a series of big screens at Circular Quay showing live Olympic events. There was always large crowds down. This store was around 500 m or so away from my store, and because of the demand, we occasionally had to take things down there. Our store was closing, and they were running out of buns at the busy store, so they sent me down with a big trolley of buns, those pre-split ones. Easy, right? I get about 20 m from the store, and there's a giant crowd between me and the store. So I start asking people to move, and most people are nice until one guy rips open the bag of bags and starts throwing them up in the air, screaming out, "Free burgers, free burgers." The crowd moves towards me and some police. Crowd control notice this and come over and tell everyone to back off and have a few heated words with the free burger guy. They guide me through the crowd and to the store awaiting the buns. I get grilled about arriving with one less tray of buns, but once I tell them the story, it's all good. Bonus story. Because that store was so busy, I picked up a shift after my normal shift that totaled 20 hours. I was the richest 15-year-old I knew at that time. Story 36. Literally had a guy pass in my arms. I was 19 and working at KFC in a bit of a rough area. It was a quiet day shift, so there were only 3 staff and no customers in the store at the time. A young couple who looked pretty ducked up walked in and went straight to the bathroom. After some time, the girl came out screaming for help. She said her boyfriend had gone into the bathroom to the use substances, and he was not responding, and was inside the locked men's room. My manager called an ambulance while I tried to get the door open. Couldn't kick it down like Chuck Norris, so I went and grabbed some tools and finally got it open. Found the guy, blue and cold on the floor. The ambulance came within a few minutes, but there was nothing they could do. His mother came a few days later to apologize and thank us for trying to save him. There was some police questioning and plenty of nightmare. It was been about 17 years, and I still think about it often. Story 37. I worked at my local McDonald's for 4 weeks last year. I broke my foot and sprained my ankle right before Thanksgiving. I told the store manager right after I left the ER, and she told me to come back after I saw my orthopedist. I did, but she was gone, and a different manager told me to get a knot from my doctor so I can come back to work because they needed people desperately. I got one, and a different manager took it from me, said she wasn't sure on what to do because she wasn't sure if I could work, and said she'd call me the next day. I haven't heard anything since, and it's been about a month and a half since I talked to anyone, and no one has called me back. I'm sure that with all of the miscommunication, they just assumed I walked out and quit. I have a better job now. Story 38. Not necessarily fast food, but I used to work in a bakery where our head chef had a reputation of being a grade A banana. Our nicknames were Stupid Duck and Dumb Duck. We had to work at an insane pace, and he acted as if he was God's gift to Earth. The one that stuck with me was when I made a customer a sandwich, and she requested a side of avocado. Our avocados were not ripe at all. I mean, it was like plastic. I mentioned this to her, and she said it was fine. So I sliced it for her and gave it to her. She calls up like an hour later complaining that her avocado was not ripe and she was unhappy. People are stupid. Story 39. I was working at a pub shortly after college. During the evenings, things would always get pretty stressful and hectic. People would be snapping at each other or saying mean things or arguing or whatever. Pretty standard stuff in a high-stress situation like that. One day, though, in the middle of dinner, the other cook, my immediate manager, but not the restaurant manager, apparently just had a bad night. He'd been getting progressively more agitated all night. Not with me, luckily. Suddenly, a waitress came back and complained that one of her tables was complaining because the food was cold. First, the manager responded by telling her that if she'd come, get her orders when they were done, they wouldn't be cold. But when she made some comment back, he snapped. He picked up a hot pan from the stove, and I was terrified for a second that he was going to throw it at her. Instead, he swung it as hard as he could at the entire stack of clean plates and knocked almost all of them off the table, shattering them on the floor. Then he literally tore off his apron and stormed out, but not before knocking a tray of full out of another waiteress's hands. Weirdly enough, the store manager was going to let him keep his job if he'd admit being out of line. She brought him in during lunch the next day to talk to him, and instead of apologizing, he smashed a coffee cup against the wall and left. All told, it was probably for the best. Story 40. Customer. Had one lady who claimed we messed up her order. Called the store an hour after she left and said she was coming back and she wanted her order done again plus her money back. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually, I passed her off to the district manager. Ridiculous. Story 41. I work in a grocery store. Person asked for a certain loaf of bread sliced, but only wanted half. We do this for most of them, especially the from-scratch breads, but not this particular sandwich loaf. Our employee says, sorry, but we don't slice that kind of loaf, and offered a similar one that they could have. The customer threw a huge fit, got our team lead involved, and store management. As it turns out, this person was head of marketing at the regional office down the road. We only don't do half loaves of that bread because regional says we can't. Story 42. McD's was my first job at 16 years old, and I was hired just prior to the Beanie Baby Happy Meal toys. Lines out the door, crazy women demanding we get them a certain toy, impatient and crafty people. People would say degrading crap like mentioning I was working for min wage if they felt I wasn't working fast enough. People suck. On a related note, my mom used to collect them. There was a line for a store that sold the Beanie Babies like it was Black Friday or some crap. A guy got pissed at my mom because she saw him cut in line and she wasn't having it. Other people there supported my mom in what became an argument. The guy threatened my mom, alluding to him killing her. Dude leaves and my mom returns to a car that's been keyed to crap. Story 43. I worked at McD's in high school. Some guy got fired and as a farewell duck you, he pulled the Ansel, which is the powder fire extinguisher system. The entire kitchen was instantly covered in fine blue powder. It was everywhere and everything. We had to shut the store and then everyone had to stay till like 3 a.m. to clean. That guy was a banana. Story 44. Worked on a pancake stand at a concert. We had 2 kinds of fillings, and sometimes people would ask for both at the same time. I usually just spread one on one half and the other on the other half and rolled it up so that they'd get same amount of each with each bite. 2 days in, my boss sees this and absolutely flips his crap in front of some guy who at that point has been my regular customer. Apparently, I was supposed to spread one kind on whole pancake and then just do little dabs with the other one. The customer said he liked pancakes the way I made them, but from that point forward, I was not allowed to make them the same way. Story 45. Not exactly fast food, but in high school, I worked for a certain gigantic movie theater chain. Our location was smack dab in the middle of Newport Beach, California, where a ton of various one-percenters live. One resident in particular, Kobe Bryant, would come to see a movie every other week, and he made a point to make sure everyone on staff at the time was aware. His guy would call whomever was the manager on duty at the time, and we would have to drop what we were doing, no matter how important or time-sensitive it may be, and go open the theater exit doors, you know, the ones to the left and right of the screen, in order to escort him and his sizable entourage in. There are a number of things wrong with that kind of special treatment. For starters, they would never send someone to the box office afterwards to pay for the tickets, which really messed with our audits. What really would get to me, though, was the obscene amount of noise he and his friends would make. The cherry on top. After the movie was said and done and we'd ushered his group out via the way they came in, the entire auditorium would reek of his cologne. No joke. You could show up the day after Kobe came to see a movie and at least 2 or 3 rows would still smell like him. Not exactly a horror story, but a great example of people presuming they'll be treated like VIPs no matter where they go. Condescending. Story 46. I had just started working in McDonald's, only been there about a month at this point. At this point, I had only been trained to work in the kitchen. One day, the person who was supposed to be out on the lobby wiping tables and all that had called in sick, and it was quiet, so they got me to do it, which was fine. It's not exactly rocket science. About 2 hours, and a woman comes up to me and mumbles something about something disgusting outside, so without asking again what it was, I said, "Thank you for letting me know. I'll go out and have a look at it in a minute once I'm finished changing these bins." After changing the bins, I go outside to discover a perfect log of crap sitting in a chicken nuggets box with a BBQ dip and a note that said, "McDuck you." Story 47. During my winter break in college back home, I once had an irresponsible manager at Burger King say she would be right back. Not only did I have to work both the drive-thru and the main cash register, we only had 2 workers in the kitchen who spoke little English. It was a complete crap show, but I was impressed in how we somehow managed to get everyone their food during the insane lunch rush hour. It's a BK on a major road that spans numerous towns. The worst part is she came back hours later and acted like nothing was wrong. Quit shortly after that, even though she begged me to stay. F her. Story 48. Burger King. This one manager, who kept reminding everyone he was crap hot because he had a diploma in business, he would roster teenage girls to close the restaurant alone. This is midnight, sometimes later, when we were usually hit with drunk and rowdy people after a night out. He gave me shifts during school hours. I was 16 and at high school, or try to have me work till midnight during the week, because he's trying to run a business and I should be grateful for a job. He went crazy when I told him school would always take priority over my job, and it's how his predecessor sold me the role. An older employee, late 40 era, yes, slipped and badly hurt her back. She was crying in the lunchroom in pain. The manager kept yelling at her to get up and back to work because we were busy. In the end, I told her to go home and I did her shift. He went off at me because he didn't authorize it and therefore wasn't going to pay me. 8 people quit in 2 weeks, including me. Restaurant fell to pieces and they moved this guy to another restaurant. I was offered a pay rise and a promotion when I quit. But alas, it was too late and I went to work in a toy store. Best job ever. Fast food places are run by teenagers, so there's always a bit of flex with hours, etc. Story 49. The fry oil at our place. Never changed once in the approximately 5 months that I worked there. By the time I left, it was almost black. Needless to say, I never pet anything from that fryer close to my mouth. Story 50. Got robbed. One guy put gun to waitress's head. Another act like he had a gun and got her to take money out of the register. Sent her home, everyone terrified. They got caught a few days later and sentenced to 15. Life for $170. A story 51. Not fast food, but a chain restaurant. Thought I'd post anyway. Also, don't take this in a light. It's not supposed to be. It's just this one family. We always had this Muslim family come in and order the same thing. They were pretty abrupt, but tipped well, and if they enjoyed their meal, were very nice. They were in at least once a week. Every time they ordered cheese fries. Without special order, these come with bacon. They always specified no bacon, clearly. Anyway, like I said, they came in all the time. But this one particular time, a food runner just saw cheese fries and brought them some with bacon on them. The dad absolutely flipped the duck out, calling discrimination everything in the book. My manager was very calm usually, but didn't take to kindly to being called a racist for a simple food runner mistake. They made our tallest guy waiters stand next to the table and kick them out. Story 52? I worked at Starbucks and a woman ordered her coffee at 140 degrees in the drive-thru. She walks back in the cafe after pulling out and complains that her coffee was 139 degrees because she has a thermometer in her car and she demands it be remade. I laughed at her and asked if she was joking and she demanded to see my manager. My manager remade it, but I didn't get in any trouble. She was ridiculous, but Starbucks' policy is to remake anything if a customer asks for it. Another time, there was a long wait during rush hour in the morning, and I apologized to a guy that it was taking a long time to get his white mocha to him. He glared at me and yelled, "You don't really mean you're sorry?" and refused to be cordial. He continued to look at me with disdain for the next few minutes. It made me super sad at the time. I really was sorry. A hole. I learned not to be affected by crafty people so much as I got older. Story 53. Customers at a truck stop were secretly taking pics of me while cleaning one night. My bosses noticed and sent me to the back until they left. Story 54. Coffee shop sort of counts, right? Many crappy customer experienced on Boxing Day. A lady had a massive go at us for not having our outdoor furniture out because there was glass on the floor. A customer once blocked the disabled toilet and didn't tell anyone, resulting in the entire thing flooding. Took a colleague over 2 hours to sort out. Most amusing was a staff error. The dishwasher had been full of foam after every wash for a couple of weeks and no one could figure out why. Turns out a colleague had put floor cleaner in it instead of the dish cleaner. Story 55. I worked at a pizza place with my then girlfriend and some lady had a walk-in order. She tells me what she wants. I tell her the price. She gives me money. I look down and I don't have a key for the till, my GF does. So I get her and come back to the customer ranting that I stole her money. We argue for a bit and she starts pulling out her phone. Her money was on the counter under her purse the whole damn time. She just stopped arguing and paid for the pizza. Didn't even apologize for needlessly accusing me. And of course, she didn't tip. Story 56. Oh, I just remembered another. So at the pizza place I worked at, we had a pizza that came with shrimp, but only if people specifically asked for it. So naturally, barely anyone ever ordered the shrimp on their pizza. In the pizza prep area, the shrimp would just sit there for days on end, getting frozen every night and thawed out every morning. And whenever a blue moon would happen and someone would order the shrimp pizza, they'd get like 2-week-old shrimp on their pizza. Makes me wonder what kind of iron stomach these... Story 57. In one job, I worked at a 24 hours breakfast place and had a lady, and who I assume was her daughter, request an extra container of syrup just to have a syrup fight. Well, as much of a fight as you can have with syrup anyway. They really just dumped them on each other and giggled. Another story, same job. One night, there was only one customer in the building when a limo pulls up alongside the building. A guy wearing a cowboy hat and holding a guitar case steps out. He saunters in the door, sets his guitar case down, and looks around. He then goes up to the only customer in the building and asks if he can sit where he's sitting. The guy says no and motions to the otherwise empty restaurant. There was nothing special about that table. He grumbles a bit, then asks to get her to go order. He orders something. I can't remember what it was, but it was something we didn't even sell. I told him this, and he got his guitar case and walked out the door. There's a chance he could have been someone of some renown, but I wouldn't know. Obviously not famous enough to boot someone from their seat. Story 58. I worked at McDonald's, and my coworker dropped a whole tray of burgers on the floor, picked them all up, put them back in the tray, and made orders with them. Anyone who's worked there knows how beautiful those floors are. Never ate McDonald's again, and that was 8 years ago. Story 59. I work at a certain mermaid-themed coffee chain. Our drive-thrus have cameras where we can see the customer ordered, and they can see us if we have our camera on. I always keep it. One day, I was trying to take a customer's order, and I noticed the girl, who is the driver, is acting very strangely. She is having a hard time speaking coherently and keeps making vaguely sexual noises. While I'm talking with her, I'm not actually at the order screen as I'm doing side tasks. Because of her odd speech, I stop doing what I'm doing and go to the dot to finish taking her order. I look at the customer through the camera and I realize why she's having issues speaking. Her boyfriend is in the passenger seat fingering her. I was so shocked that this was happening, and I had to take my headset off and walk away. I didn't tell my coworker who was working in the window with me what was going on, but I made them finish with this customer. It was only after the fact that I told her what happened. Bear in mind this occurred around 8 a.m. on a Sunday. Story 60. I had a man get mad because I wouldn't sell him a whole onion, and he yelled, "Bullcrap customer service, bullcrap no onion," all while giving me the double finger salute. Actually thinking about it might be my best experience. Story 61. Oh, ex-MCD assistant manager here. I have two. My store was inside a Walmart, so extra dose of stupid on a daily basis. First and third of every month was a living hell. First story, we had this one customer who came in with his wife, both morbidly obese. His wife would order 4 McChicken for herself, and he would order up to 10 McDoubles all for it. This guy was a piece of crap human being too, because every time he showed up, he'd disparage my female coworkers with misogynist comments about women should be in the kitchen and crap. His other annoyance was he would always demand extra pickle. In McD terms, extra means double. If a sandwich gets 2 pickle slices normally, it gets 4. No, this guy meant a pickle sandwich with a bit of beef and ketchup on it, but couldn't be asked to say that. So he'd bring it back up, slam it on the counter, and yell at one of the girls that he didn't get extra pickle. So we started giving him a side of pickles and charging him a sauce cup for it, my boss's call. That led to him calling corporate and complaining. Corporate, however, backed us up that it was our right to charge when the demand was rather absurd. Justice came, though. We all wanted rid of him, so one time when he came in, I made his sandwiches for him. He explicitly yelled back at me, "Make sure there's more than 4 pickles on those sandwiches." 111. Being the cheeky guy I am, I put 4 pickles on his McDoubles, took a slice for every pair, cut them in half, and put the half slice on each sandwich. He complained, to which my only reply was, "Sir, you specifically said more than 4 pickles. There are 4.5. Asterisk, I do not see the problem here." He never came back again. Second story, it was a busy day. Our area manager was in the store. She kicks me out of my spot, kitchen, to run a register. Small store. This was when MCD was doing Mighty Wing, which were a horrible idea that not only didn't sell well, but took 9.5 minutes to cook. So we were keeping a maximum of 6 wings, 2x3 PC, or 1 5 PC without waiting, in hot holding for lunch and dinner only to avoid wasting. We're lined out into Walmart. This lady in her late 50s comes up to my register and asks for a 5-piece Mighty Wing, all drumstick part of the wing. The cabinet is split Wingett's drumsticks in a way that I can't fulfill her request. So I explain politely that because it's a special order, she will have to wait for them to be cooked fresh, and that the wait will be about 10 minutes. Bear in mind, at this point, I already started ringing in the order, so my AM is asking me what's going on. She wanted to get them in the fryer so the customer wouldn't be waiting longer than needed. As she's asking me this, the customer is trying to decide on another item and snarks audibly, "That stupid git back there doesn't have a clue what she's talking about." Stop for a second. My AM had been working for the company for 35 years. She damn well what she was doing and how to run several stores, much less a kitchen shift during a rush. Stupid, no, git, maybe. But I wasn't one to tolerate insults to my coworker. In a level tone, I said, "Ma'am, that kind of language directed at our employees is not appreciated. Please stop." Her response was to shout, "Oh, to hell with you!" and flip me off in my face. She turned around and stormed out the door. I politely called after her, "And if you're going to direct that hand gesture at us, you can leave the store and not come back. Have a nice day." The look on her husband's face just said to her, "What the duck did you just do?" I took 2 seconds to collect myself and went back to serving customers. Several who saw the exchange applauded me for dealing with it. I thought that was the end. Oh no, nope. Lady calls the corporate hotline and complains that I was rude to her and demands that I be fired. She also demanded to be allowed behind the counter to see the CCTV footage, which had no audio, for one, and secondly, the public behind the counter, not happening. The store manager was right behind me the entire exchange and saw everything. Didn't hear the stupid "git" line at all, but when she tried talking to this lady, the lady couldn't keep her story straight. Needless to say, I kept my job and she never came back. Damn rude people who push blame on others. Story 62. I worked at a McDonald's when I was 15. One of the managers there was a 30-year-old guy who seemed to thrive on flexing his managerial power over the young men who worked there, and also hitting on all the underaged female employees. This McDonald's was situated between 2 busy roads and had a long access road from the further one up to the back of the building. One day, middle of the summer, 95 degrees and humid out, he decided that I should have to go out and walk this road picking up the cigarette butts that people had thrown out on the road. About halfway through my half-mile journey, he drove by waving and smiling at me with one of the girls in his car. Next day, I called him and quit. Story 63. Still can't believe this is a true story. Had a dude puke all over the floor. His wife came up to me and said, "I swear to God, my husband threw up on the floor, so if you could clean that up, that would be great." They moved tables and continued eating their lunch and watching while I, lucky fast food employee, cleaned up fresh vomit. Unbelievable. Story 64. I worked at IKEA in the restaurant. Not the main one, but the crafty one. I remember we sold out a pizza, and the next one was 6 minutes. We had 6 people ask for pizza, and we asked if they were fine with waiting. So we eventually sold out of the pizza that was still in the oven. Well, it's finally ready. People are waiting. They already paid. And my coworker took it out of the oven, as another coworker was calling his name from behind him. When he turned his head to see who called, the pizza slid off the peel and fell cheese side down, making a huge splat. The sauce went everywhere, and there was just a collective "ah" from the people who had ordered that pizza. At first, I was laughing because at least it wasn't me, but then we had to process 6 refunds while the line piled up. Story 64. It was my first job at McDonald's when I was 16. This older guy comes in and orders some sort of weird coffee drink, and I accidentally gave him the wrong drink. He made a bit of a scene and told me that the other female cashier standing next to me was nicer and better looking. Somewhere in there, he actually mentioned that he just came from church. Story 66. This actually happened a couple of days ago. I supervise at a BBQ restaurant, and the other day, I had an employee get sick while on his lunch in the break room. I'm going over timesheets, and out of the corner of my eye, I see him run to the trash can with what looked like some sort of brown liquid in his hands and casually toss it in. I'm under the assumption that he maybe spilled his lunch in the break room and was cleaning it up. I go to investigate the situation only to hear a loud lurch followed by a loud splat onto the floor. I find said employee holding an impressive amount of vomit in his hands, and all over the break room is corn tortilla-scented bile. I ask if he's okay and send him to first aid to make sure he's not dying. I glove up and begin the process of cleaning the chunky mess that he managed to spread across the break room and doors. I also find a nice trail of vomit leading to the trash can, and despite his best efforts, only managed to get his vomit onto the side of the trash can. I just about finished cleaning the vomit, and the employee comes back saying he usually feels better after a puke a lot. I'm getting ready to send him home when, surprise, he decided he wasn't done puking. He looks me in the eyes and says, "I think I need a trash can," and vomits all over the just mopped and sanitized floor. He then runs to the only hand-washing sink and decided it would be great to puke in there. I send him home and spend the rest of my shift mopping and scooping chunks of hot water and vomit from a terribly clogged sink. Hey, I wanted to be the boss, right? Story 67. I worked at a place known for waffles. We actually kept our store fairly clean, so there wasn't an issue there. Two of my favorite stories actually involved equipment breaking down. One, you know the waffle irons? Apparently they sound like a stereo shorting when they decide to pass. I worked third shift, so it's nice and quiet at about 0200. And then, asterisk Z's boom, asterisk. I nearly hit the roof. The electric outlet was sparking and asterisk on fire asterisk. Thankfully, our cook managed to get the fire out and the damn thing unplugged before it caused any real damage. But the whole place smelled like smoke and fried wires for a good day or so. 2. This is probably the worst, but even then, I'm still warmed by how well our crew held together. A couple minutes after midnight on what was now New Year's Day, our dishwasher decided to journey to the giant garbage heap in the sky. Happy New Year! So we are absolutely slammed with drunk people ordering a heap of food and no working dishwasher. Damn. The entire night, us 3 servers, and the one cook, who is the same from the first story, took shifts hauling all the dirty dishes onto a cart and running them into the back room to wash by hand in the 3-section sink. One part for dirty dishes, one for soaking washing, and one for drying. One of our servers was trained on the grill, so she and our cook would swap out every half hour. And even the cook was taking orders at times. Our regulars were stacking plates and acting as busboys. My own friends were wiping down tables so the people standing could sit down. The plates and bowls were being used as soon as they hit the shelves. It was a nightmare. At the end of the night, when the manager and the morning crew showed up, they got a rundown from us. The manager stared, then pointed at the back door and told us all to go take a long break before we had to do our end of shift duties. We all had that 1,000-yard stare. But damn it, we lived. Story 68. I used to work evenings at a deli during my senior year of high school. Anyways, we had 4 really big catering orders for that night. So in addition to the 400-plus sandwiches we make in a normal night, we had almost 1,200 extra among these 4 orders. Sandwiches people ordered at the store had priority. Then we would continue making catering sandwiches. These catering orders all came in at the same time, so nobody had a single spare moment to clean anything in hours. We had the music cranked up. It was hard work, but we were getting it done. Anyway, we had just finished up the first catering order and started on the second when corporate dropped by for a surprise inspection. We immediately started getting yelled at for being lazy and not cleaning. Everyone on the sandwich line was drenched in sweat from working so hard at this. The yelling continued and got worse and worse. Finally, Trevor, one of the guys who had been working there for a few years, put down his knife, took off his apron, and said, "Damn you. I've been working my ass off all night and you come in here and tell me I'm lazy and worthless? I don't work here anymore. Good luck with the catering." After he left, all eyes were on me. The corporate gits told me I needed to work harder because my coworker had abandoned me. I quit on the spot. The 3 people at the end of the sandwich line quit. The guy on the front register quit when he saw us all walking out. The only person left on that shift was the manager who was working drive-thru. I have no idea what happened to those catering orders. After the dust settled, the deli refused to issue our final checks. Trevor managed to track us all down and helped us through the process of filing a lost wage complaint. I don't know what everyone else received, but I got 3X, my final check after the process was. Story 69. Worked in a sanitation grade C college restaurant and worked second shift and rushes would come at odd times. I was a cook and got the fun of skating around the floor via the decades of ground and grease into the floor. We tried to bleach it every time, but nothing would cut through. Add in old equipment in too small a space with no AC in the summer in the South. I would lose weight from all the sweating. Glad I got out of that. Story 70. I worked at a Cinnabon. My managers never wanted to pay to have the grease trap maintained properly. When it backed up, it was disgusting. Stunk to high heaven. My district manager also told me I had a bright future in food service as he promoted me to shift lead. Good times. Story 71. In general, just managing a fast food joint. I was the opening manager for the Chipotle in my store, and there have been numerous amount of times I'd be opening the store as acting manager, while also opening grill, alone, no prep person. There was one time I was completely alone. If you've ever been to a Chipotle, you know there are like 20 different items on the line that you see. Well, there is also ingredients that go into those that all have to be prepped fresh, every day. So naturally, I come in and none of the previous shift's mise en place isn't done. I have to do 30 different things all in the span of 3 hours, and our store was average when it came to business. I don't think I've ever moved so fast in my entire life. Pots, pans, cutting boards, you name it, were everywhere. Finally, when I got some help a few hours later, it was all about me being alone in the back of the store, still running out of everything you couldn't make, while also being called in 2 different directions for help, and also dealing with the potential customer because service was poor. In the midst of the crap storm of being understaffed 5 people, you try and call people in to help, but no one wants to come in because they know the crap you are about to throw down. A corporate audit doesn't roll your way that will end up with your termination. I remember after calling my GM 10 times while everything was going the wrong way, and she wouldn't answer. Nothing was done, and the store was a disaster. The next manager came in, who I also pleaded with for help, begged me to stay and help after asking me why I didn't try calling her. Her phone was out of signal, of course. I promptly told her my day and why I wasn't staying, and she gifted and moaned until I left. It happened all the time, over and over. On top of that, anytime you did anything good, your general manager would take credit for it. That day I did some things that I wasn't proud of for a company that gave no craps about you. Story 72. I was 17 years old, working as a shift leader in training at Little Caesars for minimum wage. The 2 actual managers were sleeping with each other. I was asked to run the night shift so they could hide in the nasty, stinky mop closet to have sex. Those managers also propositioned me for a 3-way. I would often work until 2 a.m., then turn around and go to school and track practice the next day. My manager tried to convince me to drop track because college applications didn't care about sport participation. She also berated me for wanting Easter off, telling me that the Easter bunny wasn't real. Story 73. I worked at Whataburger for a little over a year. One night, something on the roof had broken. None of the staff were aware, but grease was apparently spraying like a fountain from the top of the restaurant for a while. Of course, a guy came through the drive-thru in a convertible right as this was happening and probably assumed the rest. Story 74. While working at Panera Bread, this lady came up to the counter to order broccoli and cheese soup, and we were out. Upon hearing this, she goes, "Then why is it on the menu? Why is it on the menu? Why is it on the menu? This is ducking bullcrap. I came out my house for this soup, and y'all the only Panera within driving distance for me. Why is it on the menu?" 16-year-old me was the only person at the counter, and I started laughing, and the lady just got even more upset. And eventually we had to call the cops, and she struck one officer, and I got to witness another officer flip her clean over a booth. Story 75. Not fast food, but cheap-ass retail. This shop was just a nightmare to work at. The management was all over the place, to the point where the assistant manager didn't go a day without letting me know how much he hated working. The shop was in an out-of-town shopping center, which no one ever went to, so there was absolutely nothing to do. I actually liked the assistant manager complaining, but eventually he left and the job went to a girl who was just barely out of school and the youngest person employed at the store. She is constantly stuck for stuff for us to do, and so just made us clean everything. The shelving had only been put in that month because it was a new store, but it needed cleaning like twice every shift. The very worst, though, was when I let my place of work know I would like a couple days off for my dad's 60th birthday. I let them know this a good 5 months in advance of the event. They told me I'd have to bring it up with the manager of the new store when it opened. So, 3 months later, when the new store actually opened, I brought it up on the second day. I mentioned it pretty much every time I saw the manager. She did not give a flying duck about me missing my dad's 60th and put me on a shift on that very morning. A very good to me colleague offered to switch, so it was okay in the end, but my God. I was so pissed I quit just before the Christmas rush. Story 76. I worked at a store that had just had its grand opening. It was near a small retirement community, and I was working the drive-thru. A very old woman came up to the window and asked for a menu. She was old, and there wasn't anybody behind her. But there's a computer that keeps track of how long each car is sitting at the window. And since she wasn't ordering anything, it was bringing the average time up, but barely. The manager told me to tell her to move, and I told him that I wasn't going to, because she wasn't bothering anybody. And if somebody told my grandma to move because of some drive-thru times, I'd be upset about that. He finally says, "But this is bad for our drive-thru times." To which I responded, "I don't give a duck about the drive-thru times." He stood down, let her read the menu, and I finally took her order and gave her her food. Unfortunately, the guy that I yelled at made the schedule, and he gave me a week of closing, staying there until midnight, and then opening, getting there at 5, back-to-back days for a week. Awful leadership skills. Not much respect for that guy. Story 77. I was working at Pofi's Chicken and Biscuits. My best friend was working with me, and we had the same shifts because we carpooled since we were both 17 years old and broke all of the time. The day in question happened to be a day when my regional and general manager were at our store. As we closed up for the evening, I realized my wallet was missing. There was only $5 in it, but that 5 spot was dedicated to the empty gas tank we had to fill to make it the 15 miles back home. My friend and I searched everywhere to no avail. Both my regional and general manager were outside waiting for us to close and just talking at one of their cars. When we finished up, we went over to both of them and asked if we could borrow a couple dollars to get home. We had both been working there over a year and were exemplary employees, so we decided it wouldn't be a big deal. My regional manager said sure, reached into his pocket and threw a handful of change at me. Seconds later, my general manager did the same thing at my friend. He and I bent over and started picking up the change as they watched and laughed. It was one of the worst moments of my life. To this day, I've never felt that kind of shame and embarrassment. My friend and I vowed vengeance. Revenge of the nature that made sure nobody would ever duck with us again. We didn't do crap. Story 78. For about a year and a half, I worked at a family-owned small chain restaurant. There's about 8 of them in my area. I worked at the main one, the only one that had a dining area, and it was probably the cleanest out of all of these particular establishments. Anyway, all of our food was pre-made at a company-owned commissary and stored there until used by one of the associated restaurants. One particular item commonly used on pasta dishes are breadcrumbs. On a particularly busy Sunday, a large group of old church ladies was in our party room and had ordered a certain pasta dish en masse. This dish required breadcrumbs to be spread on top of the dish before cooking. After making about half the dishes, the pasta table had run out of breadcrumbs. I ran the pizza oven but wasn't busy, so I proactively grabbed the container of breadcrumbs that everyone had been refilling from that night, opened it, and dumped some into a container. Noticed some sort of webbing? Spider web? All over the mouth of the breadcrumb container and clinging to breadcrumbs. Wait a second. The breadcrumbs were moving, undulating. What the heck? Maggots? Silk weaving? Ducking maggots? Thousands. We stopped sending food out. Looked at our dishes. They were wriggling, crawling with web-spinning worms. Apparently, every bag of breadcrumbs at the commissary was crawling with worms, so all 8 or so restaurants had served worm-filled pasta anytime a dish was ordered that required breadcrumb. And no one even noticed until I went to refill the breadcrumbs so old women could eat worms. An Italian fast food place I worked at served a party of old women pasta covered in worm-ridden breadcrumb. Story 79. Last week, I was on the assembly line at my McDonald's, making sandwiches when my manager ran up to me and gave me a phone, saying there was someone having a seizure in our men's bathroom. I run into the bathroom with ketchup and grease still on my fingers to find a 60-year-old homeless man having a stroke on the floor. I sat there for 6 minutes with this dying guy while the phone with the 911 operator until finally some help arrived. Then I go back, wash my hands, and go right on back to making sandwiches. Story 80. I work at a burger place. I was working fryer position with a new kid and showing him the basics. As I was reaching for a basket, he was carrying another one towards me while looking the other way and accidentally pressed it against my arm. I got a huge burn down my arm and wasn't allowed to treat it until after the lunch rush, around 20 minutes later. Story 81. I was working as the cashier. Boss came up to me and told me to grab a mop as someone made a mess in the female bathroom. She gave me no other detail. She told me I could go home once I was finished. It was still early in my shift, and the lunch rush just ended, so was intrigued. I investigated to see what I was up against prior to grabbing the mop and bucket. There was a diarrhea trail from the bathroom door entrance to the first stall. Consistency of chewed-up Snickers bars. And when I say trail, I don't mean a smear. Imagine a paint can tipping over. The seat was still down with the crap still undisturbed. I concluded that they hover crafted from the doorway across the sink area to the first stall, then over the already lowered seat. I also learned that day that fast food restaurants have hazmat bags. Just in case. Story 82. Once had a shooting out front my store. Ended up with letting one of the victims and their friends set up shop in the store waiting for paramedics. As far as bad experiences, that about tops it. Story 83. One of my experiences was a bit unusual, not about the clients, the food, or the dirty restaurant. I was working at the drive-thru, and this lady arrives with a Jeep that had several spider webs on it. And as I'm giving her cash back, I noticed this huge spider trying to crawl inside the car from the passenger window that was slightly open, and I just tell her, "That's a big spider," and pointed at it. She tried to stop it from coming in but failed. So I gave her food quickly and saw her drive to the parking lot ASAP. I wonder if she survived. Oh, and yeah, I'm working in Australia. Story 84. I once dropped an entire bag of mozzarella on the floor at Domino's. Cheese everywhere, and those floors were ducking gross. The manager told me to scoop up anything that wasn't touching the ground and put it in the tray. I didn't stay there long. That's ducking gross. Story 85. A A former coworker of mine couldn't eat pickles. He couldn't even come close to them without getting queasy. The story behind it is that as a teenager, he worked at McDonald's. They had one old guy in the kitchen who had been working there for ages. He was a big-time smoker. And one day he called my former coworker over and said, "Hey, watch this." He took his orangey nicotine hands and plunged them into a bucket of pickles. He sloshed them around for a few seconds, pulled them out, and voila, squeaky, clean hands. He then slapped the lid back on the pickle bucket and put it back under the counter.